Why you wouldn't last a day in a Byzantine office, and more a calming, immersive journey into the daily grind of a long-forgotten empire, where scrolls whispered secrets and bureaucracy ruled with an invisible hand. Introduction. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders drop, and allow yourself to drift back through time, not to a battlefield, not to a palace, but to a small, windowless room in the heart of an ancient city, a room thick with the scent of melted candle wax, damp parchment, and the quiet rustle of writing reeds against papyrus. Welcome to Constantinople. It's the 6th century, the Eastern Roman Empire, what we now call Byzantium, is thriving under a golden dome of administration, ritual, and routine. But behind the gleaming mosaics and towering domes lies something far more mundane and far more enduring: paperwork. In this video, we'll gently explore the forgotten rhythms of Byzantine life, beginning with the ordinary scribe's slow, ink-stained existence. From there, we'll follow the quiet rise of two of history's most unlikely rulers. Then we'll descend into the mysteries buried in imperial archives, and finally, we'll emerge into the perfumed salons and velvet-draped corridors of the Byzantine elite. So settle in, breathe slowly, and let's begin. Segment 1: Red Tape and Candle Wax, the day in a Byzantine bureaucrat's life. Imagine yourself not as a soldier, or a senator, or a saint, but as a clerk, a functionary, a humble servant of the great palace's endless machinery. There is early before the city wakes. Outside, Constantinople still slumbers beneath soft fog. Inside your shared living quarters, you rise silently, careful not to disturb the others. Your robe will, coarse and in colored, scratches slightly against your skin. You reach for the leather satchel that holds your inkhorn, your reed pens, and your seal. You walk through narrow stone corridors, still damp from the night's cool air. As you pass under arches, mosaics depicting Christ Pantocrator and imperial triumphs watch from above, though their glory feels far removed from your world. When you arrive at the chancery, a room no larger than a modest bedroom, a fire has already been lit. It crackles faintly, offering a flickering glow against the gray stone walls. The wax tablets are stacked carefully, ink mixed with soot and gum arabic, and the day's first orders await transcription. You don't compose words of power, you copy them. Imperial decrees, edicts, petitions, ledgers. Each stroke must be perfect, measured, slow. Mistakes are not forgiven. Paper is rare, time is precious, errors are costly. If you smudge a name or transpose a numeral, someone's estate could be misappropriated. A border town might lose funding. An entire military unit could go unpaid. And so you dip the reed once more and write, slowly, carefully, always with your back slightly curved, your breath shallow, and your hands stained black with the day's progress. Hours pass. There is no chatter, only scratching. The soft sigh of a clerk adjusting his posture, the occasional wheeze of someone with a cold. Candle sputters low, another is lit. Time, and here, is measured not by bells, but by wax. You break for a simple midday meal: flatbread with olive paste, perhaps a few dried figs if you're lucky. Then it's back to the desk. Another stack of scrolls, another hand cramp, another blot of ink wiped carefully from your robe. This is your life. Day after day, you are anonymous, interchangeable, but also essential, one tiny cog in the Byzantine machine that keeps the empire turning long after the Caesars of the West have crumbled into dust. And when evening comes, you walk home through alleys dimly lit by oil lamps. The city murmurs now, merchants closing stalls, priests reciting vespers, guards shifting in their sandals. You lie down in your shared bedroll, eyes sore, fingers stained, and sleep comes slowly. And tomorrow, think will wait again. Segment 2: The rise of Justinian and Theodora. Power from the shadows. Imagine a throne not of gold or marble, but of paper. A throne built atop scrolls, stamps, decrees, and the careful silence of ambition. While thousands of scribes, like the one you met before, copied the words of others, one man born to a peasant family in the backwaters of the empire quietly wrote his own destiny. Justinian. Before he was emperor, he was simply a name: Flavius Petrus Sebastius Justinianus. His family came from Illyria, a region in the empire's western frontier, known more for its rugged terrain than political opportunity. But Justinian had a powerful uncle, Justin, a soldier who managed to rise through the ranks to become head of the imperial guard. Young Justinian was sent to Constantinople for education. There, in quiet candlelit rooms, he studied law, theology, and administration. He walked the same palace halls as the scribes, but always watching, always absorbing, not with awe, but with purpose. He dressed plainly, spoke deliberately, and waited. Then came a moment the emperor died without a clear successor. Justin, his uncle, was proclaimed emperor, largely thanks to the support of the army. And Justinian was placed ever closer to the center of power, a shadow behind the throne. But Justinian wasn't content to remain a whisper in the corridors. As the years passed, Justin's health declined, and Justinian quietly took control of court business. He was never in a rush. He never raised his voice. But with every small decision, each tax adjustment, each building commission, each court appointment, he tightened his hold. And then, there was Theodora. She had been many things before becoming empress, an actress, a performer, a spinner of wool. In those times, such a background was considered shameful beneath the dignity of royalty. But Justinian saw something different in her. Theodora was brilliant, sharp-witted, and possessed a calm authority that unnerved even seasoned senators. Together, they formed a ruling pair that was unlike anything Constantinople had seen. While others saw in her scandal, Justinian saw a partner. He changed the law to marry her over the objections of many. She, in turn, stood by him during his darkest moments. One of those came during the Nika riots. A seemingly ordinary day turned into chaos, as angry crowds, many aligned with opposing chariot factions, rose against the emperor. Buildings burned. People died. Justinian, terrified, considered fleeing the city. It was Theodora who stopped him, with unshakable calm. She told him, "Purple is a fine shroud." She meant, it is better to die an emperor than to live in disgrace. He stayed. He crushed the rebellion. From that day forward, Justinian's authority was unquestioned. He launched building projects across the city, the most famous being the Hagia Sophia, a cathedral of impossible beauty and quiet reverence. He reformed the empire's legal code, creating the Corpus Juris Civilis, the backbone of much of modern civil law. He waged war to reclaim lost territories, even as plague and dissent gnawed at his efforts. Through it all, Theodora remained his confidant, his equal, his constant. They weren't born to rule, but they ruled with subtlety and structure, not with fire, but with form. They moved through the palace not as conquerors, but as quiet architects. Every hall they walked echoed not with trumpets but with whispered plans and careful signatures. Justinian and Theodora, the bureaucrat and the actress, rising not from battlefields, but from the shadows. Segment 3. The secret archives of the Great Palace, lost records and forgotten emperors. Picture yourself in a narrow passage beneath the Great Palace of Constantinople. The air is cool, dry, and faintly perfumed with the scent of old parchment and aging wood. Here, behind layers of marble and mosaic, lie the empire's most sacred documents, not its religious relics, but its memory. The secret archives, though not open to the public nor even to most officials, the archives were the empire's attempt to remember everything. They held property records, imperial edicts, census rolls, military rosters, diplomatic letters, and personal correspondence of emperors long turned to dust. Imagine rows upon rows of scrolls and codices, organized not by color or title, but by lineage, region, and reign. The shelves were tended not by soldiers or senators, but by a small order of archivists, quiet men, aged by ink and time, who understood the power of forgotten paper. Among the many scrolls, each wrapped in silk, tied with wax, and labeled with a careful script, were records no longer relevant, but never discarded. One such scroll recorded the daily correspondence between an emperor and his physician. Another detailed the famine that struck the Black Sea region, and how the grain shipments mysteriously stopped. Another, slightly singed at the edges, recounted a fire in the palace kitchens during a banquet meant to celebrate the emperor's birthday. These documents were never meant to dazzle. They were simply written, then stored, and yet within them lies a subtle magic, the quiet hum of Continuity. Here, emperors long erased from public inscriptions still lived on in dusty ledgers. You might discover the reign of Emperor Philippicus, who ruled briefly and died in obscurity, or read the tax complaints from peasants in Armenia who'd never seen Constantinople but paid dearly for its splendor. There might be a forgotten edict from an empress who governed in her husband's absence, her name long stripped from public monuments, but preserved here in ink. Some documents remain undeciphered, written in codes no one has broken. Others are partially erased, perhaps deliberately, perhaps by time. Many are mislabeled, waiting patiently for rediscovery. And then, there are the mysteries, tales of documents locked behind golden seals, only to be opened by the emperor himself. Rumors of letters between Byzantium and distant China. A scroll, some say, describing an entire imperial lineage that was quietly erased, never to be spoken of again. Were these stories true? No one can say. The archives are mostly gone now, lost to conquest, fire, and decay. But in their time, they were the silent heartbeat of an empire, not celebrated, not glorified, just remembered. So imagine yourself there, sitting on a stone bench beneath a flickering oil lamp, carefully unrolling a brittle piece of parchment, as your eyes adjust to the faded ink. You're not just reading a list of names. You're listening to Byzantium whisper. Segment 4. Silken robes and silver tongues, a noblest life in the Eastern Roman court. Now, lift your gaze from the dusty scrolls and rise into the golden light of the Eastern Roman court. Imagine yourself wrapped in robes of violet silk, embroidered with golden thread so fine it catches the flicker of torchlight with every step. Your sandals are soft leather, your hands perfumed with oils from distant Arabia, and your words are your sharpest weapon. You are no emperor, but a senator, or a courtier, or perhaps a patrician, one of the favored few, in the gleaming reception halls of the palace. You glide across polished mosaic floors depicting dolphins and gods, past marble columns veined like still water. The halls are quiet, but not silent. Voices float, measured, indirect, and polite. A well-chosen pause is worth more than a dozen sentences. This is not a world of war cries or roaring feasts. This is a theater of elegance, ceremony, and careful power. You must master the art of deference, how to bow just enough, speak just softly enough, flatter just precisely enough to rise. The day might begin with a formal reception. You wait in a long line of nobles, each bearing petitions, gifts, or diplomatic letters. You practice your phrases in your head, humble but clever, admiring but not desperate. When finally brought before the emperor or his chamberlain, you recite your piece with grace. You are thanked, then dismissed, or perhaps remembered. Meals are quiet affairs among the elite, heavy with protocol. Dishes of lamb and honeyed figs are brought forth, but it is not the food that sustains your position here. It is conversation. At night, there are symposiums, gatherings where poetry is recited, theology debated, and recent edicts discussed in hushed tones. The emperor's mood is a wind, calm one day, sharp the next. A careless joke, a misstep in fashion, an alliance whispered too loudly, and you may find yourself sent to a distant province, or worse, simply no longer invited. But with care, with poise, you rise. Perhaps you sponsor a new public bath, or commission a mosaic for a chapel, or lend your support quietly to one faction of the court against another. You do not shout. You do not threaten. You smile. You fund. You host. You write letters in your finest hand. That is how you survive. That is how you thrive. And yet, even for the highest born, the court is never truly safe. The corridors shift. Alliances unravel. One day, the emperor praises your wit. The next, your name is scratched from a document. But still, there is beauty here. In the echo of sandals down marble halls, in the rustle of silk layered over linen, in the scent of incense curling into domed ceilings, and in spoken rhythm of status, strategy, and slow ambition. To be a noble in Constantinople was to be both actor and audience, an eternal performance in a palace without end.